Greetings, everyone. Dr. Brian Scott with you today. This is Insights to the End Times, and if you've been with us before, you know that we have been studying biblical scriptures, hence my Bible, as well as world events to see where we might be on God's end time timetable. Even in the natural, you'll hear the people say, newscasters say that we are at about 90 seconds to midnight on the doomsday clock. Like we are in the very last seconds of time before the end arrives. And just to put this in some context, here's what happens as the end comes upon us. First of all, the believers in Jesus Christ will be raptured and removed from the earth without having to go through death. It's like they're going to be whisked up as if they were on a rocket ship. Secondly, the Antichrist will be revealed. He will be the one who wants to rule the world. Third thing, the world will enter into 7 years of tribulation. This is not only when the Antichrist is pulling his evil things into effect, but God is going to pour out his wrath upon this earth over that 7-year period. It concludes with the Battle of Armageddon. You probably have heard that term. That's where we had the devil, the Antichrist, that's the devil's forces, the Antichrist, his followers coming to the Valley of Megiddo in Israel. They're going to come against Jesus Christ, who returns from heaven with all the saints who have gone to heaven with him in the rapture and so on. And they're going to be soundly defeated. The Antichrist and the false prophet are going to be thrown into the lake of fire. And here we go into the 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ. So this is all around the corner. We don't know how soon. It's going to be very soon. As things heat up in Jerusalem and in Israel, as it continues to be the center, the epicenter of activities on this earth, we're going to see this all come together very, very quickly. When Jesus was forecasting the end, he was speaking in Matthew 24 on all kinds of natural calamities, natural emergencies like earthquakes and things of this nature, floods and forest fires and things of that nature, plagues and pestilences. But when we get over to the book of 1st and 2nd Timothy, the Apostle Paul's talking about the end times, and he's referring to the condition of men's hearts. Today we're continuing our study in 2 Timothy chapter 3. The very first verse says, "In the last days perilous times will come." These are exceedingly dangerous times. Verse 2 and 3, as a for instance, start listing the condition of men's hearts. They're going to be lovers of themselves, lovers of money. They're going to be boasters and proud, and on it goes. When we get into verse 3, we were finishing up last week with the 11th sign or a characteristic, which was slander. They will be slandering one another. Number 12 on the list is without self-control. That's New King James Version. In the King James Version, the word is incontinent. And what both of these words refer to is people have no restraint, no boundaries. They have no self-control. Now, the incontinent one is used most frequently with the lack of control over bodily functions. And I don't want to get into that area with you, but I do want to get into what this lack of self-control is all about, which is the other side of that equation. And here's the definition that I wrote out. It means there's no self-control, evidenced by an inability to exercise control. There's no self-restraint, there's no willpower, and there's no ability to say no to things. So people cast off restraint, they cast off no boundaries whatsoever. You probably have noticed this in our society today. If you go back just like 30 or 40 years ago into the latter part of last century, there was a lot of social decorum, moral decorum. There was a greater emphasis on what's right and what's wrong. There was a greater emphasis on training and teaching and discipline and so on in our schools. All that seems to be thrown to the wayside, and we're now living in a time where we have almost no self-control. Now, I want to get into some facts to highlight this, because as you read that, no self-control, what you think about is that person that you know who doesn't show much self-control. They have a dirty mouth. They speak a lot of swear words. They have very poor morals. They're not polite, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to look at some things that affect a lot of people in a fashion that we take for granted and expect. Let's get into some of these things. I'm hoping in this session to cover 3 areas for you. I want to cover obesity. Oh, I know you're already wondering, oh no, not obesity, which is overeating, obviously. I also want to look at some of the financial situations that we're in, and you'll see that we no longer have any control in these areas. Let's talk about obesity for a minute. Currently, there's approximately 500 million people around the world who are considered to be obese. That means they're not only overweight, they're past overweight. They're into the next category called obesity. And it means that they just cannot control their eating, or they have no control over their exercise programs, if they have one, et cetera, et cetera. Now, they say in the projections that if we don't get this under control soon, we're going to hit 1 billion people worldwide out of the 8 billion people on the earth. So like 1 in 8 people will be considered to be obese. That's even beyond overweight. So let's look at this for a minute. In the United States, in the year 2020, which is only 4 years ago, they considered 1 in 3 adult people were obese. The actual percentage was 36% of American adults are considered to be obese. Folks, that's a heavy-duty number. That's huge. Now, with the population in the United States being about 345 or 346 million, of that number, there's approximately 260 million people who are adults. So when you have 1 in 3 adults being obese and you have roughly 60 million adults in the U.S. population numbers, we're talking approximately 100 million people are in the category of being obese. This is huge. 100 million people considered to be obese. Now, these may be approximated figures, but they're not far off. 36% of, say, 260 might come in slightly lower than that, but round figures, to make the point, 100 million people are obese. That means 100 million, 36% of the adult population cannot control this area of their life. Now, here's another statistic that's really staggering. If you take children and teenagers from ages 2 up to age 19, almost 20% of them are obese. That's 1 in 5. So can you see what a serious problem this is? It's beyond, it's just huge. It really, really is. Now let's talk about being overweight. Overweight is the category before we get to obesity. And the figures in 2020 indicated that approximately 71.5% of all American adults are considered to be overweight. So if you've got 71 or 72% of the population, 7 out of 10 people are overweight. That means you only have 3 out of 10 who aren't. And that works out to over 185 million people out of the adult population of 260 are overweight. Can you see what a serious problem this without self-control issue is? It's as if we've thrown off all restraints. It's really, really a devastating issue because we just take it for natural. Like, hey, you're older, you don't exercise as much, you can't get out as much, you can't play sports or things like that, which would help your health situation. And oh, by the way, we've got all kinds of drugs we can take to control this. So some of the fastest growing drugs on the market in this year, 2024, have been geared towards one issue, medically speaking, but one of the side issues is it provides for a form of weight control, and it's going through the roof. And other companies are coming on board. Pharmaceutical companies are coming on board to produce similar type drugs to help this massive, massive, massive problem. So even from a drug point of view, we're talking about billions of dollars being spent to try and solve the problem, which arises from a spiritual condition called no self-control. Wow. Paul said, you want me to show you an area that's going to be a problem in these last days that will affect literally huge percentages of the population? It's their inability to exercise self-control. I find that to be very, very daunting and amazing. Well, let's go on for a few minutes and talk about another area, and that's in finances. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was being raised, I was taught to not spend more than I had and to save money. Amen. And as a result of that, my mentality became control, budget, keep things in order, pay all your bills, don't run up credit card debts. Now, I don't have my wallet in here with me this morning, but if I was to open it up and show you my wallet, I've got about 7 different credit cards inside my wallet. And that's just the credit cards I carry on a regular basis. I'm sure you've got a number as well. Maybe you're more disciplined and you use 1 or 2. But I've got a lot of credit cards. And if I was to add up my credit limits on those credit cards, it would stagger most people. Maybe not you, but it would stagger most people. And almost every time the statements come in and here's the due date, the entire balance is paid. It doesn't matter how little or how much it is. That's our mentality. That's our commitment. We're going to pay the entire balance. The only time we don't, which is very infrequent, is when we miss the actual due date. Hey, today's what? Let me look here. It's the 26th. So let's say we've got a credit card due today. We might forget in the pressure of today and make the payments in the morning. But we have found out this, just us, while we're on this topic, our credit card companies won't give us credit for payment if we make it after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So even though I might have a card due on the 26th, that means I have a card due before 4 o'clock on the 26th if I want credit. Praise the Lord. Now, let me give you some numbers. This will shock you big time. The United States, of course, we're off focus right now because those numbers are thrown around quite frequently. In the year 2019, that's only 5 years ago, the U.S. overall government debt, and that includes a lot of categories, but it was at $23 trillion. Now, you and I can't even understand what $1 trillion means, but let me break that down. That means in 2019, the U.S. government debt was equivalent to $70,000 per person living in the United States. That's amazing, absolutely amazing. And for a tax-paying citizen, it happened to be over $790,000 for each tax-paying citizen. Because you got a lot of youngsters and teenagers, and you got a lot of people who are seniors and so on. They're really not in that category anymore. So the category that's paying the bills in the U.S., it was just under $800,000 owing in the year 2019. How's that ever going to be paid off? Well, fast forward to 2021, 2 years later. The 23 trillion had grown to 30 trillion, a 32% increase in just 2 years, 30 trillion. Today in 2024, that debt level has now reached $35 trillion. The U.S. population is approximately 345 million people. So do you know what that equates to about $100,000 per individual living in the United States. That's how much of the U.S. government debt they owe. $100,000 for the government's debt. So if you get into, say, a tax-paying family, oh, it's through the roof. It's over $1 million. Massive. And you have probably seen in the papers or on the news over the last number of years that the U.S. government faces a debt date when they have to approve financing, and if they don't approve it, everything will shut down, and they always throw more money into the system to keep everything going. So the income or the revenues coming in from all sources of taxation are inadequate to meet the debt levels. And I'm not even going to try and guess at what the weekly or daily or monthly interest cost is on that $35 trillion. But let's realize it's huge. It's absolutely huge. So what's happened here? Things are out of control. Our government here in Canada, same situation. The debt load from 2000 and say 15 when the maybe I'm missing the date there. Let's say 2017. We had a change in government. They said they would balance the budget. What's happened to the budget? What's happened to the debt load? It's gone through the roof. It's just exploded higher than we ever anticipated. And what do they do on a ongoing basis? Oh, we're going to throw this many million into this project and that many million into this subsidy and and so on and so forth. It's absolutely out of control. So that's just at the government level. Let's talk about individuals. The average family credit card debt is over $7,200. Average family carries an ongoing credit card debt of $7,200. Now that's not at 10%. That's at 18, 20, 22% interest. When my credit card comes in and says that I have a balance owing of, say, $2,450, they have a minimum payment of $10 to keep the card active so I can keep adding to it. $10, but I might owe $2,450. And then in very, very, very small print, it says, if you only make the minimum payment on a monthly basis, this will only take you 39 years to pay off your credit card balance. It's just crazy. Absolutely crazy. The average overall family debt in the United States is about $104,000 in their average family debt. 75% of Americans who pass away, they pass away owing money. They are in debt when they pass away. Here's a third category. So we've covered obesity. Boy, isn't this a uplifting podcast today? We've covered obesity, huge numbers. We've covered overweight, even huge, larger numbers. We've covered government debt, massive numbers. We looked at personal debt, not good numbers. Here's the last one I want to give you, and this is automobile debt, car loans. 85% of all car deals in 2024 are being financed. Only 15% of them are cash only, like paid in full. 85% of them are on credit. And overall, the total credit in 2024 owing on car loans alone is $1.6 trillion. Folks, we're living in a society that is so self-focused, lovers of self, lovers of money, et cetera, that they have lost control. They have no self-control. And without self-control, we have no limits whatsoever. Now listen, I've got more for you in this area, but we'll continue that on Wednesday this week. I look forward to having you join us, and I trust that you will recognize I'm trying to help you with these characteristics to point out, hey, these are really, really insidious, and they are attacking us every day. So I'll see you on Wednesday. Call you blessed. Amen.